The patent trap. When the CEO fired the wrong person. She was the brilliant engineer who created every breakthrough technology her company was built on. But the new arrogant CEO saw her as just another employee to intimidate and humiliate. When he fired her in front of the entire office, he had no idea she owned every patent that kept his company alive. Welcome back to Consequences and Co. ***, where workplace bullies always meet their match and arrogance comes with a very expensive price tag. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most satisfying CEO takedown stories you'll ever hear. This is about Dr. Maya Patel, a brilliant engineer whose innovations revolutionized an entire industry, only to be fired by a CEO who thought intimidation was leadership. But when you fire the person who actually owns the technology your company depends on, you're about to learn why smart always beats arrogant. Hit that like button if you're ready to see workplace bullying backfire spectacularly. And let's watch one woman destroy an entire corporation with nothing but the truth. Chapter 1. The Genius Behind the Empire. Dr. Maya Patel had been with TechFlow Industries for 8 years, but she'd been its heart and soul from day one. As the company's chief technology officer, she developed every major innovation that made TechFlow a leader in industrial automation, from the revolutionary sensor technology that monitored manufacturing processes to the AI algorithms that predicted equipment failures before they happened. Maya's patents formed the foundation of TechFlow's entire business model. Her breakthrough in predictive maintenance had saved manufacturing companies millions in downtime. Her sensor innovations had improved workplace safety across dozens of industries. Her AI systems had revolutionized how factories operated worldwide. But Maya had always been more interested in solving problems than taking credit. She worked quietly in her lab, published her research under the company name, and let the previous CEO, Robert Chen, handle the business side while she focused on innovation. It was a perfect partnership. Maya created the technology that changed industries, and Robert built the company that brought those innovations to market. Under Robert's leadership, TechFlow had grown from a startup to a $100 million company with over 500 employees. Maya had been promoted to CTO, given equity in the company, and most importantly, retained ownership of her patent portfolio as part of her compensation package, a detail that would prove crucial later. The company culture Robert had created was collaborative, respectful, and focused on innovation. Engineers were valued for their contributions, not their personalities. Maya, who was naturally introverted and preferred working with data to schmoozing with executives, thrived in this environment. But everything changed when Robert retired and sold his shares to venture capital firm Apex Partners. The new owners installed their own CEO, Derek Morrison, a 42-year-old former management consultant with an MBA from Harvard and a reputation for transforming corporate culture. Maya's first meeting with Derek should have been a warning sign. "Dr. Patel," Derek had said, barely glancing up from his phone during their introduction. "I've reviewed your work. Impressive stuff, but we're going to be making some changes around here. Time to modernize this operation." Maya had tried to explain the technical complexities of their systems, but Derek cut her off. "Look, I don't need to understand the technical details. That's what I pay people like you for. My job is strategy and leadership. Your job is execution." It was clear from that first interaction that Derek saw Maya as just another employee to manage, not as the brilliant innovator whose work had built the company he now controlled. Chapter 2. The Culture of Intimidation. Derek's transformation of TechFlow began immediately and brutally. The collaborative culture Robert had built was replaced with a rigid hierarchy where Derek made all decisions and everyone else followed orders without question. Maya watched in horror as Derek systematically dismantled everything that had made TechFlow successful. He fired the head of research for questioning strategic direction. He eliminated the monthly innovation meetings where engineers shared ideas. He instituted mandatory efficiency reviews where employees were ranked against each other and the bottom 10% were automatically fired. But Derek's special hatred seemed reserved for Maya. During their weekly meetings, he would interrupt her technical explanations, dismiss her concerns about product quality, and make condescending comments about academics who don't understand business realities. "Maya, I need you to understand something," Derek said during one particularly hostile meeting. "The days of running this company like a university research lab are over. We're here to make money, not win science fair prizes." Maya tried to maintain professionalism despite Derek's constant disrespect. She continued focusing on her work, developing new technologies that kept TechFlow ahead of competitors. But Derek's hostility was affecting her entire team. Talented engineers were quitting rather than work under his toxic leadership. The breaking point came during a client presentation where Maya was explaining her latest breakthrough in predictive AI. Derek interrupted her mid-sentence to announce that the company would be pivoting toward more practical solutions, and that Maya's research was too theoretical for real-world applications. The clients, who'd specifically come to hear about Maya's innovations, looked confused and disappointed. After they left, Maya confronted Derek privately. "Those clients came here specifically for my technology," she said. "Why would you undermine the presentation like that?" Derek's response was swift and vicious. "Because you need to learn your place in this organization. You're not the star here anymore, Maya. I am. And if you can't accept that, maybe you should consider whether this is the right company for you." If you've ever dealt with a boss who thought intimidation was leadership, hit that like button and let me know in the comments about your worst workplace bully. Make sure you're subscribed because Derek is about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Maya realized that Derek wasn't just incompetent. He was actively sabotaging the company's success because he couldn't tolerate sharing credit with anyone, especially a woman who was smarter than him. Chapter 3: The Public Humiliation. Derek's hostility toward Maya escalated over the following months. He moved her office to a smaller space in the basement. He excluded her from executive meetings about products based on her own technology. He assigned her supervisors who had no technical background, but were tasked with keeping her focused on practical applications. The final insult came during TechFlow's annual company meeting, where Derek was presenting the company's achievements to all 500 employees. Maya sat in the back, watching Derek take credit for innovations she'd developed years earlier. "Under my leadership, TechFlow has achieved record profits by focusing on practical, market-driven solutions," Derek announced to thunderous applause from employees who were too afraid to do anything but clap enthusiastically. "We've moved away from the theoretical research that was holding us back and embraced technologies that actually solve real-world problems." Maya felt sick listening to Derek describe her life's work as theoretical research that had been holding back the company. But she stayed silent, hoping to preserve what remained of her ability to do meaningful work. Then Derek made the announcement that changed everything. "As part of our continued evolution, I'm pleased to announce that Dr. Maya Patel will be transitioning out of her role as CTO to pursue other opportunities." Maya's blood ran cold. She was being fired, in front of the entire company. Without warning, without cause, and without any acknowledgement of the 8 years she dedicated to building TechFlow's technology foundation. "Maya's contributions to our early development were valuable," Derek continued with a patronizing smile. "But as we've grown into a mature corporation, we need leadership that understands modern business realities." The room was silent. Maya's team looked shocked. Even employees who barely knew her seemed uncomfortable with Derek's casual dismissal of the company's most important technical leader. "Effective immediately, I'll be assuming Maya's responsibilities while we search for a new CTO who fits our corporate vision." Maya stood up slowly, her mind racing. Derek had just made the most catastrophic business decision in TechFlow's history, and he had no idea what he'd done. "I understand," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "I'll clear out my office today." As she walked toward the exit, Maya was already planning Derek's destruction. Chapter 4: The Rude Awakening. Derek's celebration of Maya's firing was short-lived. Within 48 hours of her departure, TechFlow began receiving legal notices that would shake the company to its core. The first letter arrived from Maya's intellectual property attorney, formally notifying TechFlow that their license agreements for 17 critical patents were being terminated immediately. These weren't minor patents. They covered the core technologies that powered every single product TechFlow manufactured. Derek's first reaction was dismissive. "It's just legal posturing," he told his leadership team. "She's trying to negotiate a better severance package." But the legal team's response was terrifying. Maya wasn't bluffing. She owned, outright, the patents for every major innovation TechFlow had built their business on. Her employment contract had guaranteed her patent ownership as part of her compensation package, a deal Robert Chen had negotiated to keep Maya with the company during their startup phase. "What exactly does this mean?" Derek demanded during an emergency legal meeting. "It means," the chief counsel explained carefully, "that as of Monday morning, we cannot legally manufacture, sell, or service any of our current products without paying Maya licensing fees. She owns the intellectual property underlying our entire business model." Derek's face went white. "That's impossible. Companies don't let employees own patents on company work." "Maya wasn't just an employee," the lawyer replied. "She was a co-founder in everything but title. Robert Chen gave her patent ownership because her innovations were the only thing that made this company valuable. Without her technology, TechFlow is just an expensive office building with no products to sell." The implications were staggering. TechFlow had over $200 million in annual revenue, all based on products that used Maya's patented technology. Their manufacturing contracts, service agreements, and licensing deals with other companies, everything depended on technologies Maya owned. By Thursday, TechFlow's phones were ringing nonstop with panicked clients who'd received notices that their service agreements were being terminated due to patent licensing issues. Manufacturing had stopped completely. The stock price had plummeted 30% in 3 days. Derek had fired the one person whose continued employment was essential to the company's survival. Chapter 5: The Systematic Destruction. Maya's revenge wasn't motivated by anger. It was motivated by justice. She'd spent 8 years building TechFlow into an industry leader, only to be publicly humiliated and fired by a man who'd contributed nothing but toxicity to the company. But Maya's response was methodical and devastating. First, she terminated all patent licensing agreements with TechFlow, effective immediately. This wasn't just vindictive, it was legally justified. The licensing agreements were contingent on her continued employment and had termination clauses that Maya's lawyers activated the moment Derek fired her. Next, Maya contacted every major competitor in the industrial automation industry, offering to license her patent portfolio to anyone except TechFlow. Companies that had been trying to compete with TechFlow's superior technology for years suddenly had access to the same innovations, and Maya was offering them exclusive deals that would lock TechFlow out of entire market segments. Within a week, 3 of TechFlow's biggest competitors had signed licensing agreements with Maya. They began announcing new products that would directly compete with TechFlow's offerings, using the same patented technology that TechFlow could no longer legally use. But Maya's most brilliant move was offering her services as Chief Technology Officer to Innovate Dynamics, TechFlow's primary competitor. Innovate had been struggling to keep up with TechFlow's technological advantages that were entirely due to Maya's innovations. Maya's offer was simple. She would bring her complete patent portfolio, her research team, who were already planning to quit TechFlow after her firing, and 8 years of industry expertise to help Innovate Dynamics destroy TechFlow completely. The signing was announced at a press conference that sent TechFlow's stock price into free fall. This is where Derek's arrogance meets cold, hard reality. If you're loving this corporate karma, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment about the worst boss you've ever had. Chapter 6: The Panic Sets In. by the end of Maya's first week at Innovate Dynamics, Derek was facing a crisis that threatened to destroy TechFlow completely. Without access to Maya's patents, the company couldn't fulfill existing contracts, couldn't develop new products, and couldn't service current clients. The board of directors, who'd hired Derek based on his promises to increase profitability, were furious. Emergency meetings were held daily as TechFlow's value evaporated. Major clients were canceling contracts and switching to competitors who now had access to Maya's superior technology. "How did you not know she owned the patents?" Board Chairman William Foster demanded during a heated meeting. "I was focused on changing the culture," Derek replied defensively. "I didn't think some technical patents would be this critical to operations." "Some technical patents? Maya's innovations are our operations. Everything we manufacture, everything we sell, everything we service, it's all based on her work." The legal team delivered even worse news. TechFlow couldn't simply develop new technology to replace Maya's patents. Her innovations were so fundamental to industrial automation that creating alternatives would take years and cost hundreds of millions in research and development. Meanwhile, competitors using Maya's technology were already capturing TechFlow's market share. Innovate Dynamics announced a new product line that was technologically superior to anything TechFlow offered, using improvements Maya had developed in her first month with the company. Derek's desperation led him to make increasingly bad decisions. He hired expensive consulting firms to develop patent workarounds that failed spectacularly. He tried to poach engineers from competitors, only to discover that the best talent in the industry wanted to work with Maya, not against her. Most humiliatingly, he was forced to approach Maya's lawyers about negotiating new licensing agreements, essentially begging the woman he'd publicly fired to save the company she'd built. Chapter 7: The Settlement Offer. 3 months after firing Maya, Derek was facing the complete collapse of TechFlow Industries. The company's stock price had fallen 80%. Major clients had defected to competitors. Manufacturing had been suspended for 6 weeks. Over 200 employees had been laid off, and more cuts were coming. The board was preparing to fire Derek and declare bankruptcy when Maya's lawyers approached them with an offer that was both generous and devastating. Maya was willing to sell TechFlow a limited licensing agreement for her patent portfolio, enough to keep the company operational, but not enough to remain competitive. The terms were brutal: $50 million up front, plus 30% of all future revenue from products using her technology. But the real humiliation was Maya's non-negotiable condition. Derek Morrison had to be fired immediately, with no severance package, no golden parachute, and a public statement acknowledging that his leadership had nearly destroyed the company. "She's basically offering to let us survive as her subsidiary," the chief counsel explained to the board. "We'd be paying her almost half our revenue in perpetuity for the right to use technology she developed while working here." "What happens if we refuse?" Derek asked, though he already knew the answer. "The company ceases to exist. We can't operate without her patents, and she's made it clear that any licensing agreement is contingent on your immediate termination." The board vote was unanimous. Derek Morrison was fired, effective immediately, for gross mismanagement and failure to understand the company's core intellectual property assets. But Maya wasn't finished with Derek yet. Chapter 8: The Public Reckoning. Derek's termination was announced in a press release that detailed exactly why TechFlow's board had been forced to fire their CEO. The statement, written by Maya's public relations team, was a masterclass in professional destruction. TechFlow Industries announces the immediate termination of CEO Derek Morrison for fundamental mismanagement of the company's intellectual property relationships. Mr. Morrison's decision to terminate Dr. Maya Patel, the inventor of all core technologies underlying TechFlow's business model, nearly resulted in the complete collapse of the company. The board acknowledges that Dr. Patel's innovations have been the foundation of TechFlow's success since its inception, and regrets that Mr. Morrison's leadership failures have damaged relationships with the company's most valuable technical assets. The business press coverage was devastating. Headlines like, "CEO destroys company by firing its most important employee," and "the most expensive firing in corporate history" dominated industry publications. Maya gave a single interview to Harvard Business Review, discussing the importance of respecting technical talent in leadership decisions. Her comments were measured and professional, but the implications were clear. Derek had failed because he'd confused intimidation with leadership and ego with strategy. "Companies succeed when they value the people who create actual value," Maya told the interviewer. "Leadership isn't about taking credit for other people's work. It's about enabling brilliant people to do their best work." The article became required reading in business schools as an example of how not to manage technical talent. Derek, meanwhile, discovered that his reputation in the business world had been completely destroyed. No company would hire a CEO who'd nearly bankrupted his employer by firing the person whose work made the company valuable. His LinkedIn profile attracted ridicule from industry professionals who'd followed the TechFlow disaster. Within 6 months, Derek was working as a mid-level consultant for a firm that specialized in helping failing companies, a humiliating come-down for someone who'd once controlled a $100 million corporation. Chapter 9. The New Empire. While Derek's career crumbled, Maya was building something unprecedented in the industrial automation industry. Her work at Innovate Dynamics had already revolutionized their product line, but Maya had bigger ambitions. Using the $50 million TechFlow had paid for patent licensing, plus her equity stake in Innovate Dynamics, Maya launched her own company, Patel Technologies. Her vision was simple but transformative: create the most advanced industrial automation systems in the world, led by technical experts rather than management consultants. Maya's reputation in the industry meant she could recruit the best engineers from around the world. Many of her former TechFlow colleagues joined her new company, excited to work in an environment that valued innovation over intimidation. Leading researchers from universities and competing companies approached Maya about collaboration opportunities. But Maya's most satisfying hire was Robert Chen, TechFlow's former CEO, who came out of retirement to serve as Patel Technologies' chief operating officer. "I should have protected you from Derek," Robert told Maya during their first strategy meeting. "I knew when I sold to Apex Partners that they might not understand what made TechFlow special, but I never imagined they'd be stupid enough to fire you." "The best revenge is building something better," Maya replied, "and we're going to build something extraordinary." Patel Technologies' first product launch broke industry records. Maya's new automation systems were so advanced that they made TechFlow's offerings look obsolete. Major manufacturers lined up to upgrade their facilities with Maya's technology, abandoning TechFlow in droves. Within 18 months, Patel Technologies had captured 40% of TechFlow's former market share. Maya's company was valued at over $200 million, making her one of the wealthiest self-made women in the tech industry. Meanwhile, TechFlow continued its slow death spiral, surviving only as a minor player licensing Maya's older patents while watching their former CTO revolutionize the industry they'd once dominated. Chapter 10. The Ultimate Victory. Before we see how this incredible story of workplace justice ends, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more tailies, where brilliant employees get the last laugh on terrible bosses. 2 years after Derek Morrison fired Maya Patel in front of 500 employees, the tech industry gathered for the annual Industrial Innovation Awards, the most prestigious recognition in automation technology. Maya sat at the head table as the ceremony's keynote speaker, having been selected to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award for her revolutionary contributions to industrial automation. Around her sat the CEOs and CTOs of major corporations, venture capital partners, and government officials who'd come to honor the woman whose innovations had transformed manufacturing worldwide. Derek Morrison was not in attendance. His last known employment had been with a small consulting firm that specialized in corporate restructuring, helping companies avoid the kind of catastrophic mistakes he'd made at TechFlow. During her acceptance speech, Maya didn't mention Derek by name. She didn't need to. Everyone in the industry knew the story of the CEO who'd nearly destroyed his company by firing its most valuable employee. Innovation thrives when brilliant people are trusted, respected, and empowered to do their best work, Maya told the audience. It dies when ego replaces expertise and intimidation substitutes for leadership. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. But Maya's real triumph wasn't the award or the recognition. It was the email she'd received that morning from a young engineer at a major tech company. Dr. Patel, I just wanted to thank you for showing that brilliant people don't have to tolerate workplace bullying. Your story gave me the courage to stand up to my own toxic boss. I'm starting my own company next month, and I wanted you to be the first to know. You proved that the best revenge is building something better. Maya realized that her victory over Derek had inspired a generation of technical professionals to demand better treatment from their employers. The story of her spectacular revenge had become a cautionary tale for executives and an inspiration for employees who refused to accept workplace intimidation. TechFlow Industries still existed, barely, as a minor player in the automation market. The company Maya had built was now a shadow of its former self, surviving on licensing agreements for her older patents while watching Patel Technologies dominate the industry with cutting-edge innovations. Derek's career never recovered. The man who'd thought he could intimidate brilliant people into submission had learned that intelligence combined with determination would always defeat arrogance combined with ignorance. Epilogue: The Lasting Legacy. 5 years after the most expensive firing in corporate history, Dr. Maya Patel stood before a packed auditorium at MIT, delivering the commencement address to the graduating class of engineers. She'd been selected not just for her technical achievements, but for proving that brilliant people didn't have to tolerate workplace abuse. You are entering a world where your innovations will change lives, Maya told the graduates. But remember, your value isn't determined by people who don't understand your work. Your worth isn't measured by supervisors who confuse intimidation with leadership. In the audience, dozens of young engineers who'd left toxic workplaces to join companies that valued technical talent smiled and nodded. Maya's story had inspired a movement in the tech industry, a rejection of management styles that prioritized ego over expertise. Patel Technologies had grown into a global corporation with over 2,000 employees, all working in an environment that respected intelligence, rewarded innovation, and protected brilliant people from workplace bullying. Maya's company culture had become a model for tech companies worldwide. The Dr. Maya Patel Foundation, established with proceeds from her patent licensing empire, provided legal support and financial assistance to technical professionals facing workplace discrimination or intellectual property theft. The foundation had helped hundreds of engineers, researchers, and inventors stand up to abusive employers and protect their innovations. Maya's autobiography, The Patent Trap: How Workplace Bullying Backfired Spectacularly, became required reading in business schools as an example of why companies must protect their most valuable technical talent. But perhaps Maya's greatest legacy was personal. She'd proven that brilliance combined with determination would always defeat arrogance combined with ignorance. Her story reminded every technical professional that they didn't have to tolerate workplace abuse. They could take their talents elsewhere and build something better. Derek Morrison's name had become synonymous with catastrophic leadership failure. Business schools used the TechFlow case study to teach future executives about the importance of understanding their company's core intellectual property assets and respecting the people who created them. The man who'd thought he could fire Maya Patel without consequences had learned that some employees are irreplaceable, and that the cost of treating irreplaceable people badly can destroy everything you're trying to build. Maya's revenge hadn't just been personal, It had been transformative for an entire industry. She'd proven that workplace bullies always meet their match. Arrogance always comes with a price. And the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something so successful that your former employer becomes a cautionary tale about what happens when you fire the wrong person. Thank you for watching Consequences & Co. This story of workplace bullying and spectacular revenge shows us that brilliant people should never tolerate toxic leadership, and arrogant bosses always underestimate the wrong employees. If Maya's story of turning devastating firing into unprecedented success inspired you, smash that like button and let me know in the comments about your own workplace justice story. Subscribe for more incredible tales where intelligence beats intimidation and karma always finds its target in the corporate world. Remember, every brilliant person deserves respect, every toxic boss meets their match, and every act of workplace bullying eventually backfires spectacularly. Subscribe now for more stories where the smart guys win and terrible bosses get exactly what they deserve.